Okay, I'm Corey Pinkston.
Amber Smith.
Jesse Garati.
All right, I will be going first.
Would you like a timer?
I think it's okay. I think I got it.
Okay.
I timed myself a few times, so hopefully it's good. All right. Okay. I remember when my husband told me that he had a problem with pornography. I knew it wasn't good, and I knew it made me a little bit uncomfortable to hear. But after we talked about it, I thought it would be okay. He just wanted to be honest with me about it and said that it wasn't a problem anymore. I knew he loved me, and I thought that that was enough. Plus, I felt like it was a pretty big deal that he was so upfront and honest about it. I didn't really understand what any of this meant at the time, for our marriage, for him, or for me. I was uneducated. I didn't know that porn could literally kill love. I didn't know that porn would change who my spouse was. I didn't know that his pornography addiction would have such a huge impact on my emotional well-being. I remember the first of many times that I caught him watching pornography. My heart sunk. I felt betrayed. I felt unwanted. I just felt like I wasn't enough, couldn't be enough. Any sexual interactions within my marriage had been nearly obsolete the entire time we were together, and I blamed myself. He promised me time and time again that he was clean from his addiction and everything was okay. Then, one night, while he was letting me rest, I caught him watching porn on the living room floor while our newborn child slept on the couch in front of him. A year and a half later, after 4 years of marriage, I caught him cheating on me. So, what is pornography? Many have defined it differently over time and in various studies, but today it is most often simply referred to as sexually explicit materials. Many have connected pornography to sexual violence throughout the years, but it wasn't until the mid-2000s that people began to associate pornography with divorce or as having any impact on any type of relationship. Actually, when it comes to relationships, a large number of people believe that pornography is harmless and can even increase marital satisfaction. But there was a recent study done by a social scientist, Kyla Rasmussen, that showed that the likelihood of infidelity among pornography viewers was almost double that of non-viewers, and those who consumed pornography on a regular basis were 60% more likely to be divorced than those who did not. Another recent study by Samuel Perry showed similar findings in that the frequent use of pornography did negatively impact a couple's relationship over time. In 2016, the Utah Senate declared in a concurring resolution that pornography is a public health crisis and that it has the potential to harm individuals and society. The resolution points out several topics on the harm of pornography, and it specifically declares, whereas pornography use is linked to lessening desire in young men to marry, dissatisfaction in marriage, and infidelity, whereas this link demonstrates that pornography has a detrimental effect on the family unit. Though this declaration doesn't ban pornography or impose any laws, it is a huge step forward. It is the recognition that pornography is harmful and that we need to provide more education about its harmful effects and develop recovery programs. We need to start taking action. We need to fight for greater restrictions on sexually explicit websites, ask the government to start educational programs that will teach others about the potential harmful effects of pornography. There are other things that we can do to help spread the word about the harms of pornography. Find organizations like Fight the New Drug and join them in their cause. Share their articles. Family advocates can learn so much from this particular organization alone. Do research on the subject yourself and then educate those around you. Talk openly about the subject to your neighbors, friends, and family. Talk to your children. Tell them the truth about what pornography is and how it can harm not only them, but those that they care about. I believe that at this point, there are too many stories out there like mine to keep ignoring the fact that pornography is a problem. And even though others may not agree, here it is. This is the truth. This really happened to me, and it is really happening to so many others. But together we can work towards slowing down and eventually stopping the demand for porn. Any questions?
The questions I had are totally like, I cannot ask these questions now. So I'm gonna try and think of one, because I had a couple and I was gonna be total like social justice warrior, like, how can you say this? But I'm like, she can't say that. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll think of some.
You can ask whatever you want.
I know, I feel like my questions were answered. You did a really good job.
Thanks.
I guess, do you know how long it's been a problem? Like, has it been since the beginning of, I guess not time because it's more with
Pornography,
technology.
it kind of has. I mean, it's existed. Sexually explicit materials, if you look at it in that way, have been around since the beginning of time. I mean, you can look pretty far back, and even when you look in the Bible and in the Book of Mormon, things like prostitution and things like that. I mean, those are different forms of sexually explicit materials. It just depends on how you define it. And
Right.
like I said, it's been defined in so many different ways, and even studies, a lot of their findings depend on how they've actually defined what pornography is. It's interesting.
Yeah. So then I guess, because I'm just thinking of how we can try to help those who are addicted to it and who are affected by
Mhm.
it. And I'm just, do you, I'm just trying to think of how, other than shutting down the corporations and businesses and people who produce it, like, do you think that the government can put a stop to that?
Well, I guess that for me, where Utah last year declared it as a public health crisis, the reason I feel like that was such a huge step was because I feel that if we can educate those around us, I think that's probably the most important thing that we can do. I don't necessarily think that they're very close to being able to just shut down pornography. I don't think it's that simple or that easy. I think there's too much corrupt and money and, just a ton of stuff involved in that. So I think that it starts with the education. And I think that Utah being able to do that, and I wish and hope that other states eventually could follow along. And I think it's going to take time and more studies and more proof. Unfortunately, I feel like stories like mine aren't necessarily proof for a lot of people. They want studies, even though in all reality, I feel like people's stories like mine are studies. Like that was what happened to
Yeah.
me. That was over a 4 period, like I was married to him for over 4 years. Like, and I feel like to me, it's the same thing. And even though I'm just one person, I'm not the only person who has this story.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the more we hear from people who have been affected by it and we teach our children, then it probably over time
Yeah.
will begin to become less of a problem.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing.
I guess a question that came to mind. I was looking at some like articles trying to find like a good solid opposing view question, and one of them was talking about like how there wasn't any significant negative effects of pornography so long as it wasn't like the hard stuff like child pornography or like rape pornography or like the really
Yeah.
stuff. So as far as like policies go, do you think there's a distinction between, should there be certain policies like enacted against those hard types of porn or like just all types of porn in general?
I think it would be a good start to start with the harder types of porn. I absolutely think that those should be eliminated first. But I think when it comes down to it, the biggest thing is I would like everyone to recognize pornography as an addiction. I think that, and when you look at it, like not everyone gets addicted to alcohol, but it still is an addiction. And that's how I feel about pornography. Not everyone gets addicted to pornography, but a lot of people do. And the people that do, they start watching that stuff that's not hardcore. That's where they start. And just like any other addiction, it escalates because they need more and more and more. They need it to become harder and worse because that's what fuels their addiction. It's like they become numb to what they've already seen and they need more excitement in order to, which is why it quite often leads to infidelity because that's the thrill seeking aspect of it. They need to get their next, the next thrill, and that's what it ends up turning into.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay. I think that we're good with Amber. Okay, so I will go. Let me just pull it up. Okay, so I will be talking on the epidemic of fatherlessness in the United States and the need to bring fathers home. Throughout history, the world has seemed to change in many aspects. Time helps us grow and learn from our mistakes in most areas, but with all that change, one thing has remained consistent, and that is the domain of the family. Throughout history, it was rare to find a household where a mother and father did not live together raising their children. Only in the last few decades, the world has forgotten that part of our history. We seem to be missing the mark and have created the epidemic of fatherlessness. Fatherlessness refers to the lack of a father's presence in a home or a child's life. In America alone, a lack of fathers is becoming a trend. Back in the 1960s, almost 88% of children lived with both biological parents who were married to each other. Now, remember, during the 1960s, America was in the middle of the Vietnam War. This meant that many fathers were absent and families were faced with many struggles, including death and poverty. Yet 88% of children still grew up in homes with a mother and father's influence. Today, however, in a time when fathers are not being drafted into the military or forced to leave their homes, that number has dropped to 68% of children who live in intact families. Too many children, 17.4 million in fact, grow up without the influence of their father, and it is a major problem. Whereas fathers used to be the role models of the house, now they are tossed aside as if it will not make any difference. Now, today, I would rather not focus on the negativity of fatherlessness, but would rather remind everyone of the critical and special impact a father can make on their children, hoping to encourage us all to bring fathers back home. Here is my own personal story. I was the firstborn to my loving mother and father. I always had both parents involved in my life and always felt loved. My father would often take me with him to the car wash, and he always gave me a penny to throw into the fountain outside so I could make a wish. For some reason, I always wished for ice cream. That wish never came true, mostly because I never told my father what I had wished for. But I still went with him every week because I loved being with him. That meant more to me than any silly wish. He also taught me how to play baseball out in the front yard. After his long hours at work each day, he would spend time with and teaching me. I was not good, not at all. But my father loved baseball, and that meant that so did I. As I got older, I still spent time with my father. I even talked to him about the boys I liked because he was genuinely interested in my life. If I got in a fight with my mom, he would support her, but still comforted me with quiet words and warm hugs. My father was amazing. He was firm but loving. He was kind-hearted and available. He showed me what a good husband was supposed to look like and taught me what to expect from my own future husband. Because of him, I found a wonderful man to marry who is now a father to our first daughter. My husband adores me and our daughter. He goes to get our daughter out of her crib in the middle of the night for me so I can feed her. He will change her dirty diapers. He watches her for me so I can go to the grocery store alone and have a quick break. My husband loves my daughter and will be there for her through every struggle, every heartbreak, and every happy moment of her life. I thank my father for loving me and showing me what to expect from a man so that my daughter can now have a wonderful father too. Now, this may just seem like a nice story, but it does demonstrate the impact a father can make. Fatherlessness causes many issues for children at home, among many other things. According to the Child Development Journal, teens without fathers are twice as likely to be involved in early sexual activity and 7 times more likely to get pregnant as an adolescent. I believe that I refrained from premarital sex because of my father's presence and the way I saw him respect my own mother. I knew that women should be respected and that marriage was important. Fatherlessness also leads to more aggression in children. According to the Journal of Marriage and Family, children of single mothers show higher levels of aggressive behavior than children born to married mothers. Children respond aggressively and more rebellious when fathers are absent. Fathers need to play with their children and be active in their lives so that it does not lead them to the road of crime. Today, you can look on any social media page and see countless claims against men for sexual assault. If fathers were more present and wanted, I believe that these issues would be far more under control. Children need their fathers to protect them and teach them so they do not face countless issues such as these. One area of government that does not support the importance of fatherhood is the connection between Obamacare and contraceptives. Obamacare allows for women to receive free coverage of all FDA-approved contraceptive methods. It is as if they are encouraging women to participate in immorality and premarital sex. Premarital sex sends a message to men that they are not needed as a husband or father. The proportion of children living with just one parent rose from 9.1% in 1960 to 20.7% in 2012, and this comes with the increasing rates of premarital births. This government program focuses on the individual rather than the family and replaces the responsibility of fathers who can teach their children by word and example that they are important and that marriage and family are important. I hope we can all recognize the positive impact of fathers and strive harder to fight and bring them back into the home. Okay, so any questions?
So, do you think that fatherlessness being the issue, do you think that it is in a majority? Do you think it is because we are sending a message so strongly that they aren't as needed as they used to be? Or do you think that there are a lot of other factoring reasons into it? Like, what would you say is like the main reason why fatherlessness has become so, I don't know, popular?
Apparent,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so from what I've studied so far, I think that I haven't found one that is probably more, I guess, or more of a cause than another. But I think that with the increasing popularity of the feminist movement, is that women are trying to make men not equal to them, but seem like they're just as important instead of recognizing the different roles that they each have. So I feel like women are making men feel inferior to them, and because of that, men are turning away. I think too, like your topic, pornography, all of these things are causing higher divorce rates. So divorce rates and premarital sex rates are increasing, which means that fathers leave the homes. And I read too that courts right now they support mothers far more than they support fathers. And so I'm not saying that fathers in all cases are innocent. I think that, I mean, most cases, I bet, like men are abusive or have other issues, but courts aren't allowing fathers to have any interaction with the children. They're kind of pushing them farther away than trying to balance it out or give them the help that they need. So that's kind of what I've seen so far.
So then I had a question concerning like the families where infidelity occurs or abuse, this, or that. If, say, the mother chooses to divorce the father or whatever, are those kids then, I don't want to use condemned because that seems very harsh, but subjected to the same level of what you talked about in those studies? Are they going to experience those same level of studies because their mom is just trying to do the right thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to have to, yeah.
So I think that in that case, it's far better that the father and mother aren't together in the home, but the children still need to have interactions with the father. And so, I mean, that's really hard for the mothers and fathers because you probably don't want to interact with each other. But there was a statistic that said that fathers that are in the home but aren't emotionally, I guess they don't have an emotional relationship with their children are okay, let's see. So the emotional relationship between a child and a father who doesn't interact with the child at home is the same as if the parent or father was no longer living. So it really requires a relationship. And so as hard as it may be, you still need your children and their father to have a relationship even if they aren't living in the home. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So then, should the government have any role in when divorce occurs? Should the government have any role in trying to like incorporate father figures into the child's life, or would that be more the responsibility of the mother and like the community and like the immediate people around her, if that makes sense?
So do you mean like if when they're deciding if, like, the responsibilities of each parent during a divorce.
Well, so let's say that like the parents get divorced or whatever, and then there's no contact with the father for whatever reason, whether it be court instituted or father's and mother's choice, whatever.
Yeah.
Should the government try to implement policies that ensure that all of these children in single mother families like are getting the like basically the fatherly type of attention that they need?
Mm-hmm.
Or should that be more based off of an individual, like a mother's need and like the people around her, if that makes sense?
Personally, I think that it should be an individual thing. I don't know if the government should have that much interaction or control in our relationships, but I think that by us trying to advocate for the importance of fatherhood and a relationship of children and their fathers, I think that that can help mothers in this situation realize that either they need to bring a man or a role model into their home or their lives, or strive to work with their ex-husband. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the father. I think that if they have a male role model who can teach them these things, then the children will have far less issues than no interaction with any male at all.
So, just pure curiosity, were there any studies that were actually done or have been done, or even any material out there at all that would compare the effects of having your actual father in your life versus having a father figure, if that makes sense? So, whereas my son doesn't have his father in his life very much, my ex is super wishy-washy about his involvement. So, but my son has my dad, his grandfather, and he also has his uncles who are around a lot and like are great role models. But is there still a difference between, you know what I mean? Because in my mind, there would be. And that's just a
Yeah.
personal thought. So I was just curious if there's actually any, you know, research done out there about it.
Yeah. There is research. I didn't use any of it in my papers, but I did see studies that compared the two. So I'll look more into it and I'll let you know, because I'd be interested in finding that out too. Because I do think that it would probably make a little difference, because a child's going to know that their grandpa isn't their dad, you know, but I bet that it helps prevent a lot of issues. It
Yeah,
just
I
might
guess
not
that
be
was really my
exactly the
question is, does
same.
it prevent some of those, like the aggression issues and the likelihood of having sex, you know, at such a younger age, you know, things
Right.
like that. Just curious if it makes
Yeah.
a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it does.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Okie dokie. Cohabitation. So here we go. Okay. Most people hope to enter into a relationship where they will be happy with that person forever. What little girl hasn't, at some point or another, dreamed of finding her one true love? For a bright future, a person silently pleads that that relationship will never come to an end. There is one thing, however, that swiftly snatches that dream away, and that is the threat of cohabitation. Cohabitation, where two people with a mutual interest, even love for each other, live together without getting married. To those people, this seems like the test drive to marriage, or the easy way out of it, but I'm here to tell you that people who are involved in a cohabitating relationship are significantly worse off than those who are married. Dictionary, to cohabit is, quote, to live together as a married couple or in the manner of a married couple, end quote. The latter part of the definition is the focus of my thoughts today. In a survey given in 2010, youth ages 15 to 19 were surveyed, and 66% agreed that cohabitation is acceptable before marriage. Studies have shown that there are numerous negative effects on couples who cohabitate. There is a disconnect between public perception and scientific fact when it comes to cohabitation. While society may feel that there is nothing wrong with it, science says otherwise. The American College of Pediatrics put together a list of studies that give various reasons why cohabitation is hurtful to individuals and families. Shared some of the results are as follows. Cohabitating couples are more likely to end their relationships than their married counterparts. Marriages that occur after cohabitation are more likely to end up in divorce when compared to marriages that didn't occur after cohabitation. Partners are more likely to be unfaithful when in a cohabitating relationship in comparison to married persons. Children who have at least one parent in a cohabitating relationship are at greater risk to grow up in poverty, have more behavioral problems, and obtain lower education. In a report by the Heritage Foundation concerning the safety of women and children, children with divorced or never married mothers are 6 to 30 times more likely to suffer from serious child abuse. Where is this disconnect coming from? Why are people continuing to pursue this lifestyle when so many scientific sources say that it's harmful? Could it be that people are choosing to ignore facts in their search for self-gratification? Is the idea of marriage so threatening to one's freedom that it is comparable to prison? Maybe personal experience as a child has led to the desire to pursue alternative means and avoid marriage because all marriages must be that way. Or maybe public policies make it so that there are no negative consequences for cohabitation. In my search for policies pertaining to cohabitation, I haven't found many, just a lot of data to prove why policies for cohabitating shouldn't be implemented and why society loves the concept of cohabitation. What I did find in my research, though, was a bit absurd and detrimental to the cause of marriage. Few states have common law marriage, where two people can live together and be exactly like a married couple without getting the license, and eventually they can gain recognition in the eyes of the state as being married. In Utah, common law marriage isn't a thing, but cohabitating partners can petition the state to recognize their relationship as a marriage so that they can file for divorce when they separate. As in any common law state, they have to meet certain requirements in order for this to occur. In no way does this solve the problem of cohabitation. It only encourages people, in the state of Utah in specific, to cohabitate if they choose to, because they could still possibly reap the benefits of divorce. I think that all states that have common law marriage should get rid of it and should instead offer marriage preparation classes and couples counseling. I think that the state of Utah should get rid of their clause allowing cohabitating couples to be viewed as married couples in order to get divorced. This lifestyle is redefining marriage and family, and it has negative consequences on society as a whole, even if society chooses to ignore it. Our governments, local and national, need to uphold the dream of marriage held by countless people, or eventually it will be just that, a dream. Is there any questions?
Yeah, because in my study, I was going to talk about how the United Nations was for same-sex marriage. And so with cohabitation, like same-sex marriage, they're basically redefining marriage altogether. And so my question is, if such high levels, like international with the United Nations and our own government here in the US, who are allowing basically marriage to be anything anybody wants it to be, how did you find anything of how we could ever go back from this? Because I feel like now that we've said that same-sex marriage is legal and cohabitation is becoming more of a legal thing too. I know you talked about it, but I guess what specifically can we do to ever come back from that? Because I feel like once we've gone this far, it's hard to ever go back.
And I agree with you. Like, I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where it will be 100% completely, traditional family again or whatever, because since that Supreme Court decision for gay marriage, like, so many doors have been blown open that I don't think they fully comprehended when they made the decision. But as far as like family advocates, I think what it is just bringing awareness to the people, and like for those that work on a more like state or national or even international level, really just being effective speakers and finding effective studies that will be able to influence people, because that's another thing is people nowadays are like solely relying on the emotion of things, and they don't care what science has to say if it like totally disproves how they're living. And so I think it's really like we just need to be bringing awareness to the issues, at hand, and just really fighting for what we believe, even though to many it may seem like a losing battle.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered your question.
No, yeah, it does. I'm just thinking like the gospel perspective, we know that the second coming is gonna happen. And so
Mhm.
with these issues, like I think that if we're going to be judged for how hard we fight for it, even if we don't change anything. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
So I feel like I just lost my train of thought. Let me. Okay, so there are just like, I feel like pretty much in any of these threats that we could possibly discuss, there's the people who are the exception who are going to say, we cohabitated, we're married, we've been married, super happy for forever. Like I have my one brother lived with his girlfriend before they got married, and they're an amazing couple and I adore them, and they're strong, you know. And so there's always that exception to the rule. And even when it comes to like pornography, there's always that person who says, hey, I can watch it casually and it doesn't do anything, like I'm fine, like I'm good. And we can all say whether or not they're lying, but still the point is that like there's always going to be those exceptions. And so how do you get across to those kind of people? Because that's where I like lose it, like feel like I lose my battle, because they have like this personal experience. And so how do you like argue against it unless I don't know, it's just so hard for me because I know that science is on our side with the cohabitation, but they're still going to argue that like, no, I feel like that's probably more of a minority that actually happens to, you know, like how do you really argue it?
Well, I think also on the flip side of that is you have marriages that are totally not perfect, that like, they get married and it's not hunky dory. And I think like just goes to show that, hey, like these people didn't have it, but here's all the benefits of marriage in general. So apart from like sharing studies, I really like, you can't change their mind. You can't be like, oh my heck, like you're wrong, your marriage is going to fail, because I don't think we necessarily have any right to flat out say that. But I really don't know. I think just like compare, like, I don't know. I just think like, well, not all marriages are perfect type of thing, but still like science has shown that marriage is the best thing. But as far as, I don't know how to reach those people, I don't know, because one of my best friends is like totally happy with her boyfriend that she's living with right now. And I would never dare say like, hey, did you know that you're probably going to end up either breaking up or getting divorced? Like I would never say that. Like, I don't know, not to a person that I know. I don't know. So
I guess some of my
I don't know.
thoughts are that it like really needs to be, and in most of these cases, that it's more the like all these issues. The reason that they're so important is because the statistics are, first of all, like on our side, but second of all, I think it needs to be a preventative measure. Like it's not about like whether or not you'll be okay. It's about preventing the possibility of it being the opposite. And the other thought I had was, okay, so I don't even know if this is a real question, but the people who want to still be able to file for divorce, like, okay, you still want to be able to file for divorce. You still basically want to have all the benefits of being married. So what is it that's stopping you from actually getting married?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, like just what I've noticed is just that society in general is kind of taking this approach that like either marriage is totally just like, oh, it's totally archaic and just old fashioned, or that a lot of people even are scared that like of the possibility of divorce if they get married. And so I think a lot of people set themselves up for failure in that way, where they like, oh, I'm gonna test drive marriage with cohabitation, or I'm gonna see if it works out. And they don't have enough faith in themselves and in their partner, if that makes sense. And again, like there are exceptions to the rules, there always is, whatever. But like I think it's just like the way that society is geared, be it through like how they've been raised or how the media portrays family, so on and so forth. Like there's just, I don't know, there's a lot of different options, but those are the main ones, that they're either scared of it or they just totally see marriage as irrelevant and doesn't have any purpose to society, and that they honestly believe that. Maybe not for any good reason in particular, but it's like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't really care for it. So, yeah.
I was just gonna say too, you mentioned it, but what I've noticed recently is every time I go to watch a movie, it like me and my husband will find ourselves saying like that never happens, or like like in relationships they try and make it seem like this is how relationships are supposed to be, or this is what happens to most people, and that's rarely the case. And so I think that media has really made us think that relationships are as they portray them, and I think that it kind of scares people away, and
Mhm.
they they don't have the perspective that we do with the gospel either, and so I think that they don't see the long-term or eternal um like prospects of it, I guess. And so
Mhm.
it I guess they just are afraid of um failure, I guess. And
Mhm.
so rather than having to face that or struggle, they go with the easy route where like, well, if I don't get married, then I don't have to go through divorce. And
Mhm.
so things like that. So yeah, I think that the media really does have an impact in this.
Definitely. And I think also like the thought just came to me like depending on like the area that you grew up in, like you grow up in Utah, most of the time you're like, oh yeah, marriage is fine. But if you grow up in like a more, I don't know, like if you're surrounded by a whole bunch of feminist people, women that are like, oh, marriage is totally just blah, 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 like why would you even want to get married? Like if it just sounds dumb, or even if you did want to, like you'd have to deal with all the pressure from all those people being like, I can't believe like I thought we could trust you, this, that. And so it comes down to a lot of in certain areas. I don't think it's very common so much now because marriage still is like even though it's on the decline, like it's still a desirable thing for most people. But I think in those certain areas there are those situations where they're like, oh, I'm gonna have to answer to all these people if I choose to get married as well. And so I think there's that aspect, that fear as well. So
Perfect. Thanks. I feel like I guess I just feel like all family advocacy in general is really hard if you don't have like the gospel or any sort of religious perspective into it, really. I don't necessarily
mhm.
know that it's specified to just the gospel. I feel like any religious perspective changes the way you feel about the family for some reason, and especially in the gospel because of what we believe. So family advocacy is just a little, it's hard. It's really hard, and it's hard not to want to bring religion into it, and it's hard to not want to share that with others because that's where so much of our passion comes from, is from what we believe in.
And I think also like when I was like trying to look up opposing views for both of yours, but especially yours, Corey, like they made no sense whatsoever. Like I found an article, 5 advantages and 5 disadvantages to being a single mother. And like the 5 advantages were like you get to raise your kid all your own. You don't even have to worry about compromising in parenthood. You get to have control of all the finances, spend the money where you want. Like you can have your kid help around the house. But then the 5 disadvantages were the exact same thing but worded differently. You kind of have to like be the parent. But one of them was you can give all your undivided attention to your kid. And I was like, I don't know any single mom that can truly say that they can do that. And I was like, that makes no sense. And so it's ridiculous. It's just a lot of, oh, you'll be free and empowered by doing all of these things. But you're like, but that's no, like that, no, it's just no. And so,
I know it's so hard finding research for it because I think I mean, with all of these topics, there's more of an opinion than research. And so we just have to try to share our opinion and tell good stories and give the research that there is, and hopefully people will believe us and want to change. But okay, I think we're done, so I'm going to end it.